So finding UN statements and speeches. So what we're going to cover today is sources of information, where you might find statements and speeches, and then focusing a little bit on the UN Digital Library and how to find speeches at formal meetings, how to find statements in press releases, and how to potentially find quotes within a speech. Then we're going to move on to some other sources of information, including the UN Journal, the UN Audiovisual Library. I have it written down here as the Multimedia Library, but it's because it's media.un.org, but it is the UN Audiovisual Library, and the Office of the Spokesperson as another source of information. So we'll go over that. And as I said, if you do have any questions, let us know. This is a shorter session than we usually do. So hopefully this will be concise and clear. So speeches can be in a number of settings, and one of the first things you need to decide is if you are looking at a speech that's in a formal UN meeting or in other occasions. So for formal UN meetings, they may have meeting records, which are UN official documents, and in that you will find the text of the speech. Just one thing to note with these formal UN meetings is that not all meetings get meeting records. So depending if you are looking at a subsidiary body or an ad hoc commission or something like that, in those cases, you might get instead of getting a meeting record where the speeches are, you might get a speech summarized in a report that subsidiary body submits to the parent organ. So that's one hand where you have the formal meetings, and usually UN delegates or UN staff may make statements in these formal meetings. There are also sometimes we find people are asking for speeches that are at other occasions. So sometimes UN officials, like especially the Secretary General or the Deputy Secretary General, will be making speeches or statements at an opening ceremony, the opening of a particular, let's say, commission or committee or something like that, a commemoration or a lecture. In these cases, they're not official records, but there are places that you can look for that. So that's sort of one of the first things to keep in mind. Are you looking for a statement or a speech that's coming from a formal meeting, or is it another event, in which case you want to look in other sources? When you're looking at these formal meetings, these speeches are not published as separate documents, but they're included in the meeting records. So when you're looking for a speech, you need to look in the records. There are two types of meeting records. There are verbatim meeting records, so those are procès-verbaux. They contain the full first-person account of the proceedings of a meeting. So here is an example here with the member from the Russian representative, or the representative from the Russian Federation speaking, and you can see it's using "I would like to sincerely thank all delegates." So it's in first person, whereas the summary records, those are third person condensed versions, and it is someone else reporting on what Ms. Pereira Gomez said representing Brazil. So you can see that's now in third person, and she said that her government remains committed. So you find those two types of meeting records where you can find statements. For the verbatim meetings, there are three bodies that get these verbatim meetings. They are the General Assembly plenary meetings and the First Committee meetings, and then the Security Council meetings. When you see a PV, that's the procès-verbaux, that means that you are looking at verbatim meetings. So the Security Council, you would always see a meeting record that starts with SPV and then the number of the meeting. So this was the 9,829th meeting of the Security Council. The General Assembly will have, for the plenary, will have PV, and then this is the 54th meeting of the 77th session. And then if it's the First Committee, it would be A, and then C1, 77, PV 54. So you've got your procès-verbaux meetings. Those are always indicated with a PV. And then most meeting records will be summary meetings. This is indicated with an SR. So you can see, for instance, the Fifth Committee will have a meeting record that is indicated with A for the General Assembly. C5 is indicated for the Fifth Committee. 77 means the session, and then it's the 25th meeting. Economic and Social Council will be E for Economic and Social Council, then it will tell the year, and then this is the 13th meeting of the Economic and Social Council. So those are the two types of meeting records that you're looking at. And so then when we get into the digital library looking for speeches, you'll know that we are going, in fact, to those meeting records to find those speeches. So the UN Digital Library, if you haven't attended our trainings in the past, what this is it's one access point. You can find UN documents and publications. So like all of the resolutions, the draft resolutions, the meeting records, they're all there. But we also have specialized collections that focus on information contained within those documents. So contained within meeting records are speeches. And that's why we have this specialized collection that is the speech records, which is what we're going to talk about when we're looking for these speeches given in formal meetings. Some important dates to keep in mind with this speech records is it provides access to the speeches so that you can go to the meeting record to find these speeches. For the General Assembly, it's from 1983 onwards. But for the general debate, it goes all the way back to 1946. For the Security Council, it's 1964 onwards. And then for the Economic and Social Council, it is 1946 onwards. If you are looking historically and you are looking at older speeches, let's say that come from the 60s in the General Assembly, you would need to look at the Index to Proceedings, which is a publication where you can search for speeches. There is a section that is the speeches index there. And actually, maybe you can put in our FAQ about the Index to Proceedings. There's a video that explains how you can use the Index to Proceedings to look for those older statements. So I want to go into the speeches collection. So this is the UN Digital Library, and you can see on the side here, you can narrow by collection and you can narrow by speeches. So I'm going to show you a few searches. I'm going to switch over to the browser and show you a few searches in the UN Digital Library here. And the reason that you would want to go into the speeches collection itself is because you have the option on the side to narrow to a UN body, to a country organization, and to a subject. So you can see what speeches were given, let's say, at the Security Council, by France. And let's say we want to look at sanctions compliance. And then you can see we're getting the speeches by a representative of France and related to sanctions compliance. Now you can see this first result is actually about the Democratic Republic of Congo, but sanctions compliance will be another element of it. You'll see here you've got the meeting record. So it's a SPV and then the meeting number here, but there's no text to the speech. I click on this record here, and you can see their sanctions compliance is showing up. And I don't have the text. And the reason I don't have the text is because, as I mentioned earlier, it's actually in the meeting record. So you need to click through to the meeting record, scroll down, and then if I look for France, I get the speech by the representative of France here. So I can find the full text of the speech here. So that's one thing to keep in mind every time you're looking for the speech is you do actually have to do that extra search to look in the meeting records. But the speeches index allows you to do a search for a representative in a particular body on a particular topic. One of the things we like to suggest when you're looking at speeches is to do this advanced search, because the advanced search allows you, oh, you can see my filters are still on the side. Anytime I want to start a new search, just click on the home here, go to speeches again, and I'll do an advanced search. And when I'm in the speeches collection, I'm able to do an advanced search for speakers, looking for individuals. That would be a speaker, country and organization. That would be the name of the country or the organization, symbol, agenda, or year. So if, for example, I was looking for a speech by Kofi Annan, I can choose speaker and I would look for Annan. And then you can see I'm getting a number of results for an N, but I can say I'm looking for the one who represents the UN Secretary General under country and organization. And then I get the speeches by Kofi Annan. If I just remove him from there and just keep it with the UN Secretary General, then I'm getting all UN Secretary Generals, regardless of who the individual is. So just one thing to keep in mind with that country organization, it also means role. So like UN Secretary General or International Criminal Court prosecutor, those sort of things. It's not the name of the individual, it's the name of the role, or it's the name of the country and organization. I'm gonna take that I have a sticky mouse that sometimes double clicks on me.
Maybe
Okay.
I can
Yep.
have the opportunity to interrupt you.
Yep.
Somebody's asking if it's possible to search by language in which the speech was delivered.
Okay, I can show you how you can potentially do that. I'm thinking the way that you do that is in the full text of the search and looking for spoke in whatever language. So when I get to the full text search, I'll do that search. So I will get back to that one and I will answer that one just in 1 minute. Just one more search I want to show you with regards to this advanced search is that you could look for a country organization here and here, just to keep in mind when you're looking at a situation in a country, it's not country and organization. In that case, it's agenda. So agenda is like the subject. So if I wanted to see what China has said on Ukraine, I wouldn't choose Ukraine as subject in organization, or sorry, country organization. I would choose that as agenda. And then document symbol. Let's say I want to look at only Security Council, but also the General Assembly because there's an emergency session, special session on Ukraine in the General Assembly. But if I say PV, then I can say in the document symbol, then I can restrict it to the General Assembly plenary or Security Council or the first committee there. So you can see that's another example of using that advanced search and using those drop-down menus to say where you want to look for that information. So just to go over, that advanced search allows you to look for the speaker, the country, organization, or role, the document symbol, the agenda, or year. Unfortunately, language is not one of those ones as an option to speech, but you could as an option to search, but there could be a trick that you could do in the digital library. Or sorry, in the full text search. And then the thing to keep in mind here is the actual speech is in the meeting record. So you need to click on the name of the individual and then click through to the meeting record. And then once you get to the meeting record, you change to the language version you want, and then you search within the full text of the document. So the next thing I want to show you in the presentation, though I will come back to those meeting records, is looking for statements or press releases that the Secretary General has made. So sometimes the Secretary General, as I mentioned earlier, will make statements at an event, at a commemoration, they will give a lecture, that sort of thing. That's not in a meeting record, but those are in press releases. So for instance, I look for 50th anniversary. Click on search here. And I have the option, by the way, this was just doing a basic search. I wasn't in the speeches collection, but you can see I can select speeches here, but I can also select press releases. And when I select a press release here, I'm going to go under options, year, to get the most recent one at the top. And if I click on this one, so this is the 50th anniversary of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. When it's coming from a press release, you can see we have a link here to access. I open that in a new tab. That actually brings me to the press releases page, and it brings me to the speech and the statement that was issued by the spokesperson in this case. There. So I can find speeches and statements this way. If I'm looking at earlier years, if they've been digitized, you can find the full text here. It looks like we have it in English twice for some reason. I don't know. I wonder if they are in English twice. Yep, in English twice. So you can see I have the statement, the speech that is here in full text. Sometimes you might not have that. In those cases, you just need to note down this reference number and let us know, and we can check against our print collection. And then sometimes we are linking to the press releases website to find that information there. So that's if you're looking for those statements and those press releases, the statements by the Secretary General. If it is available online, it will link to the press release. And then here is where we come to looking in those full text. So as I mentioned earlier, when you are doing a search in the speeches collection, you're not searching the full text of the speech because it's taking you to the meeting record. So when you actually want to search the full text of a speech, you want to look in the meeting records. And so then you can't say, unfortunately, you can't say, I want when the representative of France spoke on this topic. The only thing that you can find is when France has been mentioned and that topic has been mentioned, or you're looking for a quote. So just as an example here, if I were to do a search at the top here and say the gap between the world as it is, I get no results because when I do my search in the digital library, by default, it's not searching the full text. It's searching the description of the document. But if I turn the full text search on and I narrow to meeting records, and I pull up one of these meeting records, and do a full text search. Now, one thing I've noticed when it does a full text search, I can see my results here and I get one result and it is the gap, but this is not the gap that I'm looking for. But my results said it was there. So I'm going to just try doing it another way. World as it is. And I actually see here is the gap between the world as it is and the world as it should be. So sometimes this magnifying glass, it doesn't necessarily understand if the text is on one line and then on the other. So just look for your basic words and you can find the quote there. Now, in answer of your question, I'm seeing this is not the case here. But if I wanted to look for a language version, let me pull up another one here. Go to English. You can see when they speak in another language, I actually don't know what the practice is in the documents. I do notice there are a few people from DGACM in the training, so if anyone does know, let me know. But when they are speaking not in the language of the document, they will put in quotation or they will put in parentheses what language they spoke in. So if you wanted to find speeches in French, if you did a search like this, and then you looked at meeting records, and then if you had more information, you could put in that more information there. So if I look at this record here, for instance, and then so you can see there it says acting president spoken French. And then you can see spoken French, spoken French. That's probably not maybe getting you the information that you want, but I think that's maybe the only way that you can do it. If you are looking for what a particular representative said, just one thing to keep in mind when you're looking in the speeches, it's not looking the full text. So if you do want to look in the full text, you do actually have to do a full text search in the meetings there. And then you don't have the ability to look for what a particular representative said. There's a couple other places where you can go for information moving on from the digital library. Meeting records can sometimes take a while to come out, and you won't necessarily find the text of a speech in a meeting record. Where you could go for this information, couple of places, one of which is at the press website. This is also where you will find press releases from the different bodies. So if I go, for instance, to the General Assembly and I go to press releases here, you can see if I look at this first one, the Palestinian Rights Committee Bureau strongly condemns the following statement was issued today, and then you get the text of the statement itself. So this is an example of where you have a press release. And then if I were to look at General Assembly's meeting coverage, this will tell you what would happen in a meeting, what was said. You can see you have some quotes in there, but again, unfortunately, this is going to be a summary of the topic, not necessarily the full statement. If it's the Secretary General speaking, then you might want to go to the office of the spokesperson, the Secretary General, and look for the statements there, which I will mention later. So the meetings coverage and press releases, you could find some statements there. Meetings coverage as well. You could find some statements there. And then the next place that I want to talk about, which is a good place to go when you are looking for information very current, is the UN Journal. So the UN Journal is going to have the statements that member states have submitted for a particular meeting. The trick with this one is you have to know when the meeting is, because the UN Journal is organized by date. And so if I pull it up, I look at what's going on today. Whenever I see this little symbol here, that means that statements can be submitted. So member states can submit statements, and you may find the text of the statement here. Since this meeting hasn't happened yet, there's nothing here. But if I know, for instance, and I know because I looked earlier, that there was a meeting on Friday, February 20th, and I see that statement, and I click on it, I will get statements by various member states in the language that they submitted. And if you click on that document, you will get the statement that was submitted by the member states. I will point out too, in this case, this is an informal meeting, which means it wouldn't have a meeting record. And so this is a good place to look for. I would look in the journal to see if there are statements that are submitted here. I wouldn't look in the digital library in this case, because these are only going to be these documents that are submitted here. So you do need to know the date. You just click on the date that you're looking at and you will find the statements that are there. You just select the date, click on the meeting, and when you look on the meeting, if there is a video, you can watch the video that's there too. That's the other thing to keep in mind, is sometimes you might not find a statement, in which case you do actually have to look at the video and see what is available in the video, in which case you might want to go to the audiovisual library. Again, with the audiovisual library, it really helps to know the meeting number to find the video. And if you don't, one thing you can do is you can use the digital library to find a speech. And then once you find the speech, you'll know the date, you'll know the meeting, and then you can look for it there. So if I go to the audiovisual library here, there's UN Web TV, and then there's the UN Audiovisual Library. This has older videos as well. But you can see if you go under categories here, you can select that you want to look at conferences at the different bodies here at the General Assembly. And so if I go to the General Assembly, for instance, I can find videos of a meeting here and then go through the meeting to see the statements that are issued there. I can search the audiovisual library here. And when I do that, I have the option to look at a date range, to look at a type of statement, and then I can choose my language version and then more information about subjects, personal name, that sort of information there. One place this can be very good, just to point out, is the media stakeouts. So sometimes after a Security Council meeting, often, I'm going to sort this by newest first. You will find representatives will make some comments to the media. Again, these are not official records. You wouldn't find them in the UN press releases, but you would find them in the media stakeout. So if you're looking for some statements or comments, the audiovisual library can be very good for that. So that is another place to look for them. Again, it's not going to be the text in this case, it is going to be a video. But in some cases, that might be all that is available. I think the last website that I want to talk about is the Office of the Spokesperson of the Secretary General. This is when you're looking for statements by the Secretary General, by the spokesperson, by the Deputy Secretary General. You just need to go when you're on that website. So if I go here under spokesperson, actually, sorry, under statements, latest statements, you will find the statements here. And you do here as well have the option to say what kind of event you're looking for, which UN official is speaking, a date range. It goes back to about the mid-90s. So if you're looking earlier than the mid-90s, you would want to look at what is available in the digital library in terms of those press releases, or just contact us and let us know. But you can find statements by the Secretary General available here. So you can see here's one that are remarks at the Conference of Disarmament. There's a video, there's the text that's there. You can filter by document type, so the statements, press events, readouts, officials, date, and also location, which could potentially be helpful. I couldn't quite figure out exactly when it started, but it looks to be about the mid-90s, but like it starts with 1 or 2 statements and speeches, and then it gets to quite a bit. So mid-90s is sort of the date there. Finally, I just want to point out 2 different research guides that we have in the digital library that have links to a number of related searches, including the general debate statements. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, we have the index to speeches goes back a certain number of years. And for the General Assembly, it goes back to 1983, but it does cover the general debate going back to the very beginning. And if you look on our research guide for UN membership here, and if I look at current UN member states and I looked at a particular member state, you can see there's a search for general debate statements. And so when I click on that result, it's searching in the speeches and it's searching for the general debate. So this is all of these statements by Algeria at the general debate. So it's basically doing a search in the digital library for you, specifically for the general debate. We have a similar product called UN Member States on the Record. It's got some more information about note verbals, about press releases, about representatives' credentials. But it also, if I scroll down here and I wait for it to load, and I look for, let's say, Algeria again, you can see it will tell me when it's been part of Economic and Social Council, Human Rights Council, Security Council. But then you can see it gets the general debate statements that are there. So then I can find those statements there. And then finally, just the last thing I would add is that we do have a video that shows you how to find a country's position. This is basically doing that advanced search in the digital library for the speeches, but it's also a way to find out who co-sponsored a draft resolution, any letters or note verbals that a member state has issued. That video will walk you through that. I think with that, I'm going to stop presenting and see if there's any questions that I can answer.
I'm an interpreter in the Spanish section. Thank you very much for this presentation. It's been very helpful. I was wondering, because I was trying to follow and do my own search. I was wondering if we could go back and try a search. For instance, if I wanted to search for speeches by North Korea in the first committee. I'm not sure. I tried doing that and I didn't really succeed. So I obviously missed something. What would be the best way to go about it?
Okay,
And
so in that,
thank you very much.
yeah, no problem. So that case, okay. I never get Korea entirely right, but if North Korea entirely right, but if I put Democratic Korea here, and then I look for that all words, and then how I could look for that in the first committee is this AAC1 in the document symbol. The filters aren't going to let you go to the committees, but that document symbol, you can say, if you say AAC1, you can see there, Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
Oh, okay. Great.
There you're getting the speeches in the first committee on them.
Great. Yeah, I was looking for the first committee on the left-hand side, and it was it doesn't give that option. So great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now I get it.
No
Thank
problem.
You. That's great.
Yes, I see another question, another hand raised.
So I have a question. If a country requests termination of a sanctions panel and the other countries oppose, if I want to follow that debate, who opposed and who proposed and that kind of information, how do I find that information in using this tool?
Can you say again what the country is proposing?
Let's take for an example, Central African Republic was recently terminated, and I want to find out the debate on that, like who opposed and who proposed and all that, whatever available on the GA and any platform. So how do I find that information?
Yeah. So that sort of depends on, with the sanctions committees, do you know if this was discussed at the Security Council plenary when they were debating this, or whether it was discussed at the sanctions committee level?
When a termination happens, it happens at a much higher level, and it comes to us, and then we are just told that happened, and the debate happened, and it voted, and we have no idea where and how and what. So can you enlighten us on that?
So if it's happening at a higher level, if it's happening in the Security Council plenary, there are kind of two issues as far as the Security Council is concerned, and it's whether it makes it to a formal meeting. And if it's debated and discussed in a formal meeting, then you could do a search here. Let's do an advanced search. And let's look for sanctions as my agenda. What was the country? You were like using it as an example?
It's car like car.
Yeah.
Central African Republic.
Okay. So I would choose that as an agenda as well. Security Council. So this is the sanctions here, right? This one? This committee, this 2127, is that it?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So where you could find it is you could do this search here for sanctions compliance. And then you would look to see in the meetings. And then you could say you want to look at, actually, Central African Republic situation would be a better search. So when you look here, you'll find the speeches. This will take you to the meeting record, And so you can see sanctions compliance, Central African Republic situation. And then if you looked here, you would find what member states said at this meeting. With the Security Council, sometimes, I don't know for every situation, but like sometimes it's not necessarily going to be in a meeting record where the discussions are happening. But if it is in a meeting record, you could search that way. So if you did your search in the digital library looking for sanctions, the country that you're looking at there, you look at Security Council and you can see there was a meeting. These are all the meetings that relate to Central African Republic and sanctions compliance. And then I would just look at those meeting records and see if that's where you're finding any decisions that are being made. Security Council.
These are exactly the same files that we list in our website too.
Yep.
So they're in a different platform. I have another question for you, if you can answer, please. Are there any AI tools that we can use built in your platform that we can use?
We are looking into it. We're working in it, but right now there's not. No.
Okay.
We
Thank you so
have
much.
some. Yeah. We do have some data sets. I didn't mention this. I considered including this in the presentation or not. But we do have some data sets that are available here where we have looked at, let's say, Security Council voting, General Assembly voting, some speeches where we confirm that the data that we have is correct and consistent, and then it's a set that you can download and work with it. And so we have that available as one of the things we're working on, but also working on potentially others. I saw a hand go up.
I just had a question on the one that you were showing earlier. For example, if we have to find the speeches from, let's say, Second Committee of the General Assembly for a specific member state, I was just wondering, you were doing like some kind of a search for the first committee, AC, and then asterisk. Do we have like a specific, symbols for those different committees? How do you know about that? And if that could be helpful for the search, I think, to find the speeches from the further different committees. But I was just, I was just curious because you're doing a different kind of a symbol for the first committee, like AC it's to 1, and just wondering if other committees have different set of symbols that we need to put in there.
Yes, they do. So it's pretty easy for the General Assembly main committees. It's C1, C2 for the second committee, C3, C4, C5, C6. We have a research guide on the General Assembly. So if you go to our research.un.org page, and if you look under by subject, UN documentation, there is one on the General Assembly that explains the main committees and the document patterns they have. We also have a basic guide that's about UN documents and how the document symbols work there. It's not ideal, obviously, that you can't choose the particular bodies and stuff like that, but it's sort of the way the data is structured and the way that we're able to search for it. Like if you know the document symbol, it can be quite helpful. So there's one here for the General Assembly. And then if you go to About UN Documents, this is another one that can be very helpful just in understanding the document symbols. And then we have a guide that is all of the document symbols, that if you're looking for those document symbols, it will show you for each body what that document symbol is. So I can tell you the short answer is the second committee would be AC2, but we have some guides that can tell you what that is.
And if I may jump in, we have a training session, an intro training session that might also be useful. We have some recorded sessions in another research guide. I can share this, but please, you're very welcome to sign up for this intro session. That gives a very quick overview of what's out there.
If there are no further questions, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Hope you found this useful. And one of the things, I forgot to go to my very last slide, which is, I won't bring up my slide again. It's just to say thank you. Our contact information is on our website. You can always reach out to us if you do have any questions and you're looking for anything. We're always here to answer.